Alongside delivering expected laughs, Joyride is an emotional story about culture, identity, and finding friends who can reaffirm who you are. To summarize the film, since Audrey was adopted, she has always felt like she wasn't enough. She wasn't Chinese enough or American enough, so to compensate, she just tried to be perfect in all aspects. To counter that, her best childhood friend Lolo, whose parents are immigrants from China, would introduce Audrey to Chinese culture, food, and give her a sense of belonging, as did Lolo's parents. But many years later, sometime in her late 20s, early 30s, Audrey comes to a point in her career where work trips are required, and one work trip requires her to go to China, where she's originally from. Lolo sees this as the perfect opportunity for Audrey to meet her mom, and adding she would love to make it into like a part of an annual friends trip with her cousin Deadeye. It becomes clear Lolo and Audrey are on the same page because originally Audrey wanted Lolo to come along to be a translator since, on top of not knowing much about her identity and background, Audrey doesn't speak Mandarin or any type of Chinese language. But as Audrey's college best friend joins their time in China, and the client that Audrey's trying to impress wants to know where she's from because for him, the idea of not knowing where you're from, your family, and all that, it doesn't make him comfortable having a business deal. Unfortunately for Audrey, this forces her to seek out answers to questions that she has long tried to bury deep and leave behind. So, in terms of notable performances and moments, top tier one has to be when Audrey is introduced to her mom, her mom's life, and also her mom's husband. And I'm not gonna say that this was a type of moment that led me to have like a Viola Davis snotty tear, but it caught me off guard to the point where I was quite emotional. And especially when you think about Audrey finding her mom and how it's supposed to make her feel whole, and then her getting something that America and her adoptive parents can't give, it really hits you. And I would even say it delivers a bit of an unexpected gut punch that almost feels like a sucker punch. But overall, in terms of this film, it's far more emotional than you may expect it to be. And it's not just Audrey, Aubrey, I'm probably gonna go back and forth if I'm perfectly honest with you. Deadeye, who is Lolo's cousin, who claims they don't have any friends, is shown as the black sheep of their family and tags along with Audrey and the rest very much uninvited. Yet, they are the kind of characters so sweet and socially awkward, but funny since, similar to Lolo, they are entirely themselves and comfortable with that. They have rejected their birth name to form their own identity, and while they are lonely, they are still open, willing to try and bring their best selves to whatever situation or potential relationship, friendship mostly, that is available to them. And as shown throughout the film, when given a chance, Deadeye is the best cousin or friend you can have, and you pair that with Audrey's journey and, again, unexpected emotions, potential crying, all depends how sensitive you are. That all aside, this is very much a hilarious movie. From a dirty K-pop version of Cardi B and Megan Thee Stallion's WAP to the demon vagina, which you have to see to believe, then crazy sex scenes, and then, oh my god, Lolo and Kat's beef. Joyride has so much to offer viewers who need a laugh. And we haven't even mentioned Deadeye, who you may see a lot of people compare this to Ghost Trip. I wouldn't necessarily say that because Ghost Trip doesn't have as much cultural oomph when it comes to what it provides compared to Joyride, but I want to make it very clear that Deadeye is not the Tiffany Haddish of this Ghost Trip. They contribute more than enough as this awkward, potentially neurodivergent character who is definitely a member of Lolo's family that I won't say that I just don't like the idea of comparing what Deadeye gives to Tiffany Haddish's character just because Deadeye's comedy is not about being this weird balance between religious and sexual or anything like that. It's something completely different. The only thing that you can compare Ghost Trip and Joyride to is the fact that there's a bunch of women who are not usually focused on because they're not white going on an adventure together. So the last highlight for us is the conversations regarding culture and identity. And as noted many times thus far, with Audrey lacking a cultural connection to China, with the exception of Lolo's family, you can see the difficulty of her existence. She was adopted by white people who completely relied on Lolo's family to be the sole Asian representation in her life, since Audrey and Lolo grew up in a predominantly white area. So, not only was she the only Asian kid outside of Lolo from elementary to high school, it also seems she acclimated to the thinking of a small suburban town, which is noted through Lolo saying that Audrey has has not dated any kind of Asian man. And it seems Asian is not just Chinese, Japanese, Korean type of Asian, but also Southern Asian, as in like Indian, Pakistani, and etc. That aside, on top of the conversations regarding Audrey, there's also the stuff that goes on with Lolo, who got all the details of where her family is from, as did a similarly Deadeye, and they also had connection to family members who didn't immigrate. But on top of that, there's also Kat's connection to China, since she's famous now in China as an actress, which is a lot for Audrey to compare herself to. She has this friend group and knows of people who look like her, yet in many ways you can tell she still doesn't get it. She still feels like a guest in almost any place or situation she's in, whether at work, whether it's at home, or even in China where she looks similar to everybody else. And unfortunately, oftentimes it seems whether she's in white spaces or Asian spaces, at best she is pitied in some kind of way, and at worst seen as a joke. And I'm American born, and so I can't speak for international adoptions, but this kind of gives you an idea of what it can feel like to be adopted from a different country. You can imagine what Audrey goes through, and it can kind of resonate with you in terms of just the disconnection of your friends knowing, joking, and having to educate you on customs and terms. And as much as there is this guy who Audrey meets who speaks of China being a believer in a collective and helping her understand that she has a community even without her knowing her mother and her birth family, there's still this need to recognize when it comes to Audrey, it's nice to be welcome, but still the challenge of feeling like you're home. And it just really makes for a very beautiful film that knows how to balance the touching and comical in a way that I don't think a lot of films, even films that's supposed to be about diversity or even TV shows, really don't know how to nail well. Overall, when it comes to Joyride, it is everything you could want and more, as it makes you laugh, potentially can make you cry, and it gives you 4 talented actors who not only highlight and celebrate Asian culture, but push the belief that we are entering a renaissance when it comes to Asian actors and stories.